Joshua Earl Patrick Phillips. The child killer, Phillips, was born on March 17, 1984, in Allentown, Pennsylvania, to Steve and Melissa Phillips. His childhood was marked by a difficult family environment, as his father Steve, a drug and alcoholic, was abusive and imposed strict rules. Both Phillips and his mother lived in fear of Steve's behavior, who showed a particular aversion to girls. This situation led the family to move from the Lehigh Valley to Florida, separating Phillips from his half-brothers, Daniel and Benji. In November 1998, at the age of 14, Phillips was living in Jacksonville with his family. Neighbors described him as a quiet, friendly boy. At school, he was considered a popular student, funny but not particularly distinctive. During this time, Phillips maintained a friendship with Maddie Clifton. A year before the murder, a home video captured moments of joy between Phillips and the Clifton sisters, showing normal and affectionate interactions, suggesting a seemingly healthy social life. On November 3, 1998, a young Phillips, while home alone, was invited by Maddie to play baseball. Despite his parents' restrictions on friends when they were away, he accepted. During the game, as Phillips said, accidentally poked Clifton in the eye, causing her to have a strong emotional reaction, crying and screaming. Fearful of his father's reaction, Phillips dragged the girl into the house and, in an attempt to silence her, beat her with a baseball bat and strangled her with a telephone cord, then hid her under the bed. Later, upon discovering that Clifton was still alive, he committed murder by slitting her throat and stabbing her repeatedly. At 6:30 p.m., Sheila Clifton, her mother, appeared on the sidewalk to call her. The table was set for dinner and she wanted Maddie to come in and eat with the family. But her youngest daughter was nowhere to be seen. She crossed the street and knocked on doors. At the Phillips house, Joshua explained that he had not let her in because his father had forbidden him to let anyone in if he was not home and claimed he knew nothing about Maddie. Sheila continued to search for her. An hour later, extremely alarmed, she called 911 to report her missing. The first suspect was a neighbor with a history of sexual assault who had been arrested twice in the distant past, but had an alibi. Police and more than 400 volunteers, including neighbors and Joshua, began searching for little Maddie. The FBI stepped in, and authorities initially offered a $50,000 reward, later increased to $100,000. They handed out flyers with the girl's picture. After 6 days, it was Phillips' mother who discovered the girl's body in her son's room. On November 10, 1998, Melissa Phillips was home alone and decided to clean Joshua's room, which had a strong odor. After changing the birdcage covers, Melissa noticed a leak in Joshua's waterbed. While searching for mold, she discovered a sock caught in the duct tape Joshua had used to patch the leak. Upon removing the tape, she found Maddie Clifton's body. Shocked, she called her husband, but was unable to reach him. She then decided to go to the Cliftons to report the discovery to the police. When the police arrived, they found Maddie partially dressed, wearing only a t-shirt and socks, and signs of violence. They also discovered a blood-stained shoe in the closet, blood spatters on the ceiling, and the knife used behind Joshua's TV. Joshua's nightstand was filled with spray deodorant and incense. There was also a poster in the room with Maddie's photo used in the search the previous day. When police removed Maddie's body, they saw a gruesome detail: Maddie's hand was still clutching Joshua Phillips' bed frame. This meant she was still alive when he put her under the bed for the last time. Police arrested Joshua at the school shortly thereafter, and he quickly confessed to the murder. However, Phillips' confession was questioned by prosecutors, who suggested there may have been a sexual motive behind the killing. Although the autopsy revealed no signs of sexual assault, inconsistencies emerged in Phillips' account of events, such as the absence of blood in the playground and on the baseball, which cast further doubt on his initial statement. "Josh is a monster in my mind because normal people don't kill their playmates," the killer's father said. In an interview a week after his arrest, Josh said he didn't know what was supposed to happen, but he would like to get out. He added that he didn't know why it happened and that he needed help to find out what was wrong with him. Phillips was tried as an adult in Florida, with the trial moved from Duval County to Polk County for publicity reasons. The defense, led by attorney Richard D. Nichols, was notable for not calling any witnesses, a move prosecutors called risky. Nichols planned to base his strategy primarily on a closing argument, arguing that Clifton's death was an accident compounded by near-insane panic. However, Phillips complained that the attorney did not question him about the events of the murder, instead playing chess with him in jail. Phillips' parents, while unsure of the strategy, were swayed by Steve to let Nichols operate without interference. The trial, which began on July 6, 1999, took only 2 days, an unusually short time due to the lack of defense testimony. It took jurors just over 2 hours to find Phillips guilty of first-degree murder. As a result, he was given a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole, as he was under 16 at the time of the crime and ineligible for the death penalty. During the trial, the defense attempted to introduce neurological scans that showed lesions in Josh's frontal lobe, but this evidence was ruled inadmissible by the judge, as was evidence of Phillips' use of pornography on his computer, which the prosecution had requested. In fact, according to prosecutor Harry Shorstein, in the half-hour before the murder, Josh was looking at violent pornographic websites on his home computer. The photos Josh looked at for the prosecution would have triggered his violence, especially if Josh actually had a brain injury. Joshua showed no emotion as the verdict was read. The victim's sister, clutching a bracelet with her name on it, said it was a day of justice for Maddie. The judge told Phillips that he did not perceive himself as a child, that his monstrous act in causing the death of Maddie Clifton had made him an adult, that he was certain that on Judgment Day he would be sentenced to a far harsher sentence than the one he was about to impose. And to conclude, he quoted the biblical words of the Gospel of St. Luke, chapter 17 verse 2, "It would be better for him to be thrown into the sea with a millstone around his neck, than to harm one of these little ones." Phillips and his family did not say a word before leaving the courtroom. Phillips completed his education in prison, despite initially being told he was too young. He took college courses by correspondence and worked as a paralegal, assisting other inmates. In 2017, during an appeal, the prosecution acknowledged his good behavior. He declined to write a letter of apology to the victim's family, saying they deserve an in-person apology. He has been in Cross City Prison since 2024. His father Steve died in a car accident in 2000. Appeals. In 2002, the Florida 2nd District Court of Appeals upheld Phillips' conviction, prompting his mother, Melissa Phillips, to seek a new trial in December 2004. She argued that her son's young age at the time of the crime should influence the sentence. In November 2005, the Florida Supreme Court scheduled a hearing to decide whether to grant Phillips a new trial. In 2008, Joshua refused to write a letter of apology to Maddie Clifton's family, saying they deserved him to apologize to them in person. But Maddie's mother said she wasn't interested. That same year, Joshua said he didn't know if he deserved a second chance, but he wanted it with all his heart. "I may deserve to die in prison, but I can't see it that way." He also said he tried to avoid thinking about the murder. "That's one of the reasons I read a lot, so I don't have to think about anything else." In an interview, he said, "That little girl didn't deserve to die. I try to think about what the hell was going through my head. I ruined my life. And I ruined hers. She didn't have a chance to do anything, all because of me." To survive in prison, he admitted that, "I put my head in a fantasy world where nothing had happened. That was my coping mechanism for everything when I was a kid. I never made a decision to ignore it, I just did it." That same year, sentencing officials Harry Shorstein and Sheriff Nat Glover expressed regret over the option of life without parole for a teenager. Shorstein expressed regret for not entering a plea to second-degree murder, advocating clemency or parole for Phillips. The situation took a significant legal turn in 2012, when the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that mandatory life sentences for juveniles are unconstitutional. Phillips' attorneys were granted a new hearing in June 2017. The victim's mother requested that the conviction be upheld, and in November 2017, Phillips was resentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of a 2023 review. In December 2019, the Florida Court of Appeals for the First District upheld the conviction, granting a 2023 review to assess Josh's maturity and rehabilitation. However, the Florida Supreme Court denied Phillips' appeal in June 2020, without providing a reason.